Koi keeping is a rewarding hobby, enriching lives by bringing a sense of calm and tranquility into our garden and home. However, if you keep koi long enough, you will inevitably run into a problem. Paul has been a keen koi keeper for over 2 decades, and his fish have even won awards at prestigious koi shows all over the UK. Many consider him a knowledgeable figurehead in the koi community, but recently he's faced a problem that turned into a nightmare.
I had a letter from the water board to say that they were changing the source of water supply. And I always used to have soft water, beautiful water. And everyone was, envious of it. And then it started changing the clarity and everything. And I phoned up Andy Finch, Finch Filtration, to come and have a test of my water and everything. Andy was getting readings of saying, there's something wrong here, whatever. So then he put some extra filtration on the water for me. Oh, it must have been 12 months after that, and it was just, clarity was going worse. It was embarrassing. Trying to net fish, trying to see the fish. And it was just getting a grip of me. I almost packed it in. I kept doubting myself. What have we done wrong?
Simon and Andy were the men tasked with saving Paul's pond. Simon is a fish health professional and Andy is a specialist in water purification. They're highly regarded in the world of koi, and the pair kindly approached Paul and offered to help.
Well, basically this has been a conversation going back 2 years where Paul, Andy and myself had been concerned about the water quality that Paul had his water company changing where his water was being provided from. And Paul was thinking that problems in his pond were due to the water supply. There was a excessive growth of algae that we could see on the side of the pond. We were certain were causing problems, hoarding, detritus and things like that would normally be taken to the filters. And we felt that something needed to be done about it. We talked to several knowledgeable colleagues about it and tried our best to get the best course of action.
The water parameters just changed, and then all of a sudden these problems started to appear in his pond: clarity, weed growth, everything. So it's just snowballed from there, really.
We'd obviously thought at one stage it was a water quality issue, it was a filtration issue. We'd had advice saying that Paul needed to rip his filters out and needed to change his filtration, but it was obvious that there was an excess of phosphates and nitrates in the water because that algae was thriving to such an extent. There was no liquid treatment that we could add to knock that back, so we felt there was a need to grab the bull by the horns and get in the pond, clean it back and start afresh. Then that allows Paul that luxury of knowing that everything is working correctly. Because of the clarity issue, we couldn't see the bottom of the pond, so we didn't know whether the bottom drains were all covered in algae. We really had no clue. So it was obvious that it was the problem within the water itself, and it was potentially the death of the whole collection if the water quality dropped away, and we may not notice dead fish for a while, so it would be a cascade effect, and it would decimate Paul's hobby.
Me and Simon have spoken loads of times over the phone. We could envisage things going wrong and this, that and the other could happen, and it could be an absolute nightmare. Not a straightforward job at all.
Paul and his koi had been battling these terrible conditions for some time, but no one was prepared for the dangers lurking beneath the pond's murky surface. Things had become critical.
I think it's a ticking time bomb. What we found inside that pond because of the restricted flow of the pond and all the weed that's holding everything up and there's no flow to the bottom drains, there was a collection site for muln from the fish, all the waste, and it was just collecting in the weed. And I think if you didn't have done anything with it, there's a ticking time bomb with a bacterial problem.
We'd lost clarity. Quality of the fish was going downhill on a very slow scale, but it was happening, and we felt that there was no way back without a serious intervention. So the reality was they could have quite easily deteriorated, got infected, and then bacterial infections.
It was now more important than ever that Paul's pond and filtration were thoroughly cleaned. The welfare of his cherished pets depended on it.
We've been in and we've jet washed all this weed growth, what was on there, out of the pond, cleaned everything out. We've improved the pipe work flow from 1.5 to 2 inch, reinstated the showers. The showers have never run on this pond, so we've piped all those up, another pump, new air bars, and basically brought it up to scratch.
Once the pond was empty, we cleaned all the filters out, then hit the pond with a pair of jet washers. Andy and I started in opposite corners and then met at the other end, jet washed the bottom, cleaned the bottom out, flushed all the bottom drains, removed the air lines from within the bottom drains, secured the lids back on the bottom drains so that there was a good pull, take it back in its former glory so that there was a good pull through the filters. So that has all got to be a benefit for these beautiful fish.
With the pond successfully cleaned, Simon and Andy allowed Paul a magical moment. It was time to turn the hose on and refill the pond. Paul was overjoyed. Despite the excellent progress, there was a problem. Paul's pond wasn't filling quickly enough.
The problem is when you take fish out of a pond, you can put them into a swimming pool. I've had them in a swimming pool for a fair while. But when you're using show vats and you've only got a small gallonage of water, when you take fish to a show, they're only in the vats from Friday to Sunday night. So really and truthfully, we had to keep an eye on the fish, do water changes, look after the welfare of the fish and get them back into that pond as soon as possible.
Fortunately, Paul's kind neighbours allowed him to use their water supply, speeding up the process no end. After an evening of the hoses running flat out, it was time for the big moment, switching the system back on. There was no telling at this stage if everything would run smoothly, and delays could be detrimental. As the pond came back to life, you can see the relief on the faces of all involved, a testament to the work and dedication of Andy and Simon and the culmination of all their effort. It was now time to return Paul's beloved koi to their home. But just as hope flickered, a new challenge emerged. One of Paul's koi had suffered damage in the pond and needed medical intervention.
So once we had the fish out of the pond and into the vats, we were able to see that there was one kahaku that had got some dead scales. So the reality was they could have quite easily got infected, and then that become an open wound with bacterial infections, which potentially could have been damaging to its long-term health and survival.
Simon took the opportunity to delicately treat the injury and inspect every koi before returning them to the pond. Any injuries missed at this stage could prove critical in their recovery going forward. Luckily, there were no other casualties and everyone could breathe a sigh of relief. With the pond cleaned, the improvements made, and the fish returned, Paul could enjoy a few peaceful moments watching his beloved pets.
It's a weight off our shoulders because that many things could have gone wrong. And for Paul, for being how he is, I mean, he's put lots into the hobby. And it's for us to give something back to him and see the smile on his face today is brilliant.
I'm completely elated now the job's finished, because this was about helping a friend in need in this hobby, and all the hard work was worth it at one point this morning when we switched everything on and Paul's smiling face seeing his pond back to as good as he's seen it in a number of years, and that was worth all the hard work of this week.
Absolutely ecstatic. I can't believe it. I just can't believe it. I'll be sat out there all night tonight. Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, 2 heroes then too.
In koi keeping and life, we may face challenges that seem insurmountable. However, we must always remember that with determination and a little help, every obstacle can be overcome.